Welcome to Mom Breaks. A couple episodes ago, you heard Rowena's story, her experience navigating postpartum psychosis after the birth of her second child. In this episode, we're stepping into that same story from a different angle. Derek, Rowena's husband, joins us to talk about their life leading up to that moment, the realities of IVF, parenting two young kids, and what it felt like to recognize that something was wrong and figure out what to do next. It's a conversation about partnership, uncertainty, and what support can look like when things aren't going according to plan. We do discuss the development and treatment of postpartum psychosis, but there are no specific content warnings for this episode. With that, we'll jump into Derek introducing himself.
So I'm 41. We live in Columbia, Maryland. I'm a software engineer by trade. I'm currently an operations manager. I work for a Boeing subsidiary. I don't do anything with airplanes. I do software and systems engineering. I used to ballroom dance. That's actually how Rowena and I met in our 20s in college. Don't do much of that these days. Very busy with the kids. I have two kids. Carrie is almost 6, literally turning 6 in 4 days.
Fun.
He's 2.5. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm an Olympic junkie, so the last couple of weeks have been a lot of literally every minute that I've been home, I've been watching Olympics and looking forward to the Paralympics coming up as well.
Yeah. Do you like winter or summer more or less?
I like summer more. I feel like there are more summer sports that I like, but I really like the skiing and snowboarding because I do ski. I don't do any of the crazy stuff that they do at the Olympics. I love watching them and dreaming that I, could maybe do
One
that.
day.
There's no way ever.
Where do you ski on the East Coast?
So we have a couple local resorts in like Western Maryland and right over the Pennsylvania line. But we've also gone to West Virginia. We've gone up to Vermont before. We went out west to Colorado once. That was amazing. And have talked about once the kids are a little older going back out.
Yeah, I grew up in Utah and we flew out 2 weeks ago. We went for a ski trip, but they have no snow this year.
Oh, wow. We have such bad luck with snow. This year, we went to Snowshoe in West Virginia with my family. I have 2 brothers who have, among them, 3 kids. We all take a trip every year. And we went to Snowshoe this year, and they had a ton of snow, which is odd because we usually have very bad luck. We went to Killington 10 years ago, pre-kids, with some friends. It was the first time in 20 years they had not had snow before Christmas. Well, they have snow making, but it just isn't the same.
Yeah. So I have not skied the East Coast yet.
It is because they call it dust on crust out here. So it's a lot of ice and then a light layer of snow on top.
Well, I feel like our ski trip to Utah this year felt like how people have talked about the East Coast skiing. Like it was fake snow and it was icy and it was crusty and it was still fun. But this year, because we've had so much snow, I've been wishing we had a setup to ski out on the East Coast. So we've been eyeing different resorts and trying to figure out how to do it.
Yeah.
So someday. Okay, so we had heard from Rowena about your meeting with ballroom dancing and going through IVF for both of your babies, as well as the details of like the sleeplessness, development of symptoms, and I love the Broadway themed like delusions that came in. But for you, we want to hear about how this experience was for you. Can you share the year before the postpartum psychosis experience? What did life look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, the whole year before, so her, up to her pregnancy and everything. So we had tried a frozen embryo transfer. When we did IVF with Carrie, we had got two, I say embryos, they're not embryos, they're blastocysts is the technical term, but they're so like pre-embryo. So we got 2 that were viable. We got Carrie, obviously, and then 1 that we froze. We tried that. It didn't work. I was actually on the West Coast for work. I was in LA business trip when she got the news that it didn't take. So that was really hard. She was really upset being so far away. I was literally like driving to the airport, like to drop off my rental car. And I'm like, hey, and I'm talking to her. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I really have to go. Like, I don't want to miss. And LAX is a crazy airport. And I was like, I don't want to miss the flight. So luckily she was able to call on some friends. Some friends came over for lunch and hung out with her and was able to help her, cope with that. And then I got home later that day. But so that was hard. Then with Robbie, obviously going through IVF is a lot. It's like 30 plus shots. The one shot that you have to take every day it stings, it's painful. But then, she got pregnant. I feel like the pregnancy was fairly normal. She had a little bit of morning sickness. She had, some symptoms here and there, but I feel like it was fairly normal. Carrie was born in March, so she had not been pregnant in the summer before. So that was different. So we got a pool membership and she was like, Derek, I want to float in pools all summer. I was like, done. There's like a bunch of pools in the area that you can be members to. So
Nice.
up to and everything, including the pregnancy, I feel like was normal. Carrie was 3 at the time. She was going through the three-nager phase. Once upon a time, we had talked about having a third kid. We were sitting in the kitchen of our house, and Carrie was having a tantrum, and Rowena was in her second trimester, and we just looked at each other and we're like, yeah, no, we're not doing this a third time. We're committed to the second time. We're not doing the third time. So we had chosen then to stop at 2 kids. And then obviously after she had the psychosis, we were like, we're definitely not having a third.
Yeah. It's a lot.
What's crazy is, after all this happened, she even kind of was like, well, I would get pregnant again. And I'm like, I am not, no, I do not want you to get pregnant again. I won't say I won't allow, because that's not how, I don't.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I do not want you to get pregnant again, because I don't want you to go through this again. Because like 50% of women who get pregnant again, who have gone through psychosis, go through it again. And
there's a higher risk.
So Robbie didn't want to come out. We had to be induced on her due date. They don't let IVF babies go beyond their due date if they can help it, because there are higher risks associated. So she got induced on the due date, and he was born that day. I will say also, it was interesting. There were 2 things that were different, I think, with her labor the second time around. So one was she had to have her water broken. And she ended up getting an infection later, and we think that was probably because of that. She got endometritis, not endometriosis, endometritis. So an infection of her endometrium, and then which can be caused by water breaking. That's a risk. And also, it was interesting because with Carrie, her water broke at home. That's why we went to the hospital early. With Robbie, she wasn't dilating. Like, she was only at 3 or 4 centimeters, and she was paused there. With Carrie, she'd gotten to 7 before she got the epidural. Robbie got to 3 to 4, and she was trying really hard to labor naturally for as long as she could, which, we're pro epidural in this house. But she was trying to do as much as she could so she could be mobile, get up, walk around.
Yeah.
Once she got the epidural, she went from 4 centimeters to 9 in an hour.
Oh, wow.
Crazy.
Okay, so really helped.
Crazy. So I think she'd been stressing out, and once she was able to sort of relax, her body just did its thing, right? But the water breaking is something I want to talk about later, because we actually think that there's a possible linkage there or a higher risk factor for the psychosis. But
really, so endometritis, that was during labor?
No. We had been home for 2 or 3 days, and she popped and had to go to the ER and get antibiotics because of it. It can happen to anybody, but the chances go up a lot when you have to have an intervention like having your water broken.
Okay. Pausing to share, I'm not seeing direct research designs examining endometritis and onset of psychosis. Not surprised, but I'll include a study called Biological Stress Response in Women at Risk of Postpartum Psychosis. It's talking about the influence of life events and inflammation on postpartum psychosis, and it spotlights what we've talked about before, immune markers and stressors that can play into or could be a mechanism related to the onset of psychosis for women who are, at higher risk. So having a fever and being hospitalized with a couple-day-old baby at home is not exactly helping or decreasing risk. Also, on recurrence, I did a little refresh and was reminded how, depending on the study and follow-up length, these numbers shift. One longitudinal review with the longest term or view of 16 years found roughly 1/3 to 1/2 of women with postpartum psychosis never have an episode outside of childbirth. That it's kind of, they're including if you have an episode during childbirth, so kind of blurry. And even 16 years, it's a good length, but it's not long enough to capture data on menopause. There is another 4-year prospective study, so they're looking 4 years out from a postpartum experience. They found a lower recurrence rate of about 32%, with 2/3 of women not having recurrence outside their postpartum period. But again, this was a shorter period of time, and also in a pretty high quality care situation with a Rotterdam-based data set with moms being cared for in mother baby units there. Our dear Dr. Bergink is part of this study. Anyway, this helps explain why different studies quote different numbers. All right, let's get back to Derek.
I'd say we were already struggling as a family of four. Carrie was very excited about her brother at first, and then, with mom getting sick and then all this stuff, and like there was not enough attention being paid to her, and she actually asked us, like she said she didn't want Robbie anymore or something like that.
Oh, it's a big transition.
It is, it's huge.
Yeah. So I had postpartum psychosis after the birth of my second as well. And my first was 3. And so similar dynamic there after the delivery with the 3-year-old being pretty upset with the changes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then Rowena went back to the hospital a couple days because of this infection.
Yep, Robbie was born on a Wednesday, and I think it was like Saturday morning she had to go. Our friend came and luckily was able to take her. Or did she go by herself? I can't remember. But she went back to the hospital, to the ER. They got her the antibiotics. She was there for a couple of hours. They got her the antibiotics. Luckily, that was able to be resolved.
Okay. And then she came home and things were normal. Like things were resolved as far as the endometritis.
Yeah. Yep. It took a day or two for her temperature to come down, but it did. Probably later that day, I think, it was with some Tylenol and with the antibiotics and stuff. She was doing.
Okay, so the fever, what were the symptoms of endometritis?
I mean, she felt bad. She felt like she had the flu or something, and she had that was over, like it was like over 101. She had been sort of feeling bad that morning. We'd been sort of keeping an eye on it. She didn't have a fever yet, and then we were checking her temperature, and then her temperature went up, and I was like, you need to go to the hospital.
Okay. Yeah. All right, so then that's scary, not ideal to have fresh mom postpartum back in the ER. Yeah. What other signs did you see in the days that followed?
Once that was over, things got back to normal for about a week and a half. It's stressful, right? Obviously, the baby, they're waking up at all hours. You have to feed them every 4 hours at night, 2 hours during the day. As a mom, I'll never know this feeling, but as a mom, you feel like a milk factory, right? Mm-hmm. You're just a processing plant. So that's hard. And so those normal stresses were there, right? And I didn't see anything alarming until basically the day before she went to the hospital. Is when I started noticing some alarming things. Mostly the day of. It was a Sunday, and like we woke up on that Sunday and things were different.
Okay. How did you make sense of all of what developed?
So, I mean, at the time I didn't really. I was concerned. So I knew that she had not slept well that Saturday night into Sunday. I did not realize that was like the 3rd or 4th night in a row that she had not slept well. She basically didn't sleep at all that Saturday night, but it had several nights of terrible, like only a couple hours of sleep leading up to that. And I did not know about that. I did know because I sort of like woke up at one point in the middle of the night and she was turned the other way. Our bassinet was at the foot of the bed and she was turned the other way with her head, like right next to the bassinet the whole night. And basically every time I rolled over or woke up, whatever, she was not asleep. And so I noted that.
Okay.
So that was just a notation, though. It wasn't concerning to me yet. But yeah, then, I mean, as the days went on, there were other things that were very concerning. So we were sitting in our family room and she was clearly distressed. And she said she felt like she was dissociating, which I was like, that's an interesting thing to say, to observe about yourself and then to say out loud. So that was like warning sign number 1. We arranged a play date for Carrie because we wanted to get her out of the house, one less thing to deal with, so that we could focus on Robbie and Rowena. So we called up a friend who has a daughter Carrie's age. They used to go to daycare together. We changed daycares. We kept in touch. So Karen came and took Carrie and they went, I don't even remember that. I think they went to Port Discovery or something in Baltimore. And then, things were still stressful. I tried to get Rowena to sleep, like take a nap. She wasn't able to fall asleep. She later then, while Carrie wasn't in the house, heard Carrie, like heard her calling for her. And so that was a big, yellow flag in my mind, not quite a red flag yet, but I later would learn that she was having auditory hallucinations, right? Then Carrie came home. There were 2 other incidents before I sort of was like, we need to get help. The second thing, or I guess this is the third thing, was she said to me, oh my gosh, Robbie's so big, which is a normal sentence. Like, oh yeah, I mean, he's 2.5 weeks old. He's growing well. He's whatever, right? But then a couple hours later, she asked me if Robbie shrank. She said, "Did Robbie get smaller? Did he shrink?" And then she said, "Did I feed a different baby earlier today?" Which again, now I know
Huh.
visual hallucination, right? That was when the alarm bells started going off in my head. I was texting my sister-in-law. I was like, I'm concerned. This is what's going on. And she was kind of like, yeah, just keep an eye on her, right? Don't leave her alone with the kids right now. Just make sure you're there for her. The proverbial straw was I was in the kids' room. I was in Carrie's room. It was just her room at the time. I was getting her ready for bed, and Rowena yelled, "I need help." And I go into our bedroom, and she handed Robbie to me like he was a sack of potatoes. Like she had this blank, like listless, I don't know if this is the right word, look on her face, like, what is this thing? I don't know what it is. I don't know what to do with it. Handed it to me. And that was when I was like, okay, I am calling someone
Yeah.
as soon as I get Carrie in bed, which I did. So I got Carrie in bed. I texted my sister-in-law back, and she was like, yeah, she needs help. I texted my friend Stephanie, who I was like, can you come over, please? She like 10 minutes away. I was like, can you come over, please? I think I need some help. And then I texted 911 because Rowena was insistent that she didn't need help. Right.
Mm.
Like, don't call anyone. I'm fine. I'm okay. Like, I don't want any help. So I didn't want her to get more distressed. But I texted 911, which is not an option everywhere, but luckily is an option here.
How did you know to text 911?
I
Like how did
think I think I had heard about it, and I think it's mostly for like, domestic violence type situations, things like that, right? Um, I Googled it or something, I don't remember, but then I texted it,
Okay.
and they were asking me, and I was texting, and they were like, "We're gonna send a police officer," and I was like, "I would prefer an ambulance," and they said, "No, we're gonna send a police officer and a mental health specialist." Like, so the police officers, I was there to make sure that everyone is safe. And then, so shout out to Grassroots Crisis Intervention Center, which is here in Columbia. They're a 24-hour like mental health facility. So it was somebody from Grassroots, Angelica, I think was her name, showed up like 15 minutes later with a police officer. I went downstairs, I briefed her on the situation. She came upstairs. She talked to Rowena for 5 minutes and was like, "I think you need to go to the hospital." Then she told the police officer it was okay to leave. He left. She hung out with me while Rowena fed Robbie one final time because we were still breastfeeding at that point. And then our friend Stephanie drove her to the hospital, and Angelica followed them. Angelica was there to help her get checked in and everything, make sure that the people in the ER knew what was going on and all that stuff. So that was everything leading up to the ER mission.
Yeah. So do you have any visibility to how the police station works with this community crisis center?
I mean, I don't know if 911 reaches out to both of them. I have no idea. But I mean, the goal was to send a mental health specialist, right?
Yeah.
The police officers there to ensure their safety.
Yeah. As you were texting them, though, you explained that there was a mental health crisis of sorts. So they knew that.
Yeah, about that she was experiencing a mental health crisis. I don't remember exactly what I said. I have to go back and find the texts. But
Okay. And what was your familiarity with mood disorders at the time?
so we were aware of postpartum depression, weren't really aware of anything else. I mean, I think I had some awareness of postpartum anxiety, right? But I didn't
Mm,
realize that that was like as bad as it can get as bad as it did. Because really it was the anxiety, I think, that led to the sleeplessness, which led to the psychosis, is what we
yeah.
understand from the doctor that saw her. And so, yeah, we knew about it. We knew because Rowena had had a psychotic episode when she was 18. We
Oh, right.
was at risk of postpartum depression. We did not know that she could have another psychotic episode, that this could happen again. I also don't know if I really knew that what happened to her when she was 18 was psychosis. Looking back on it, now I understand that, but I don't think that we ever made that association. But
Yeah. That makes sense. Because, I mean, I didn't know that postpartum psychosis was even a thing.
right, we didn't either.
And does Rowena know, like, what did they tell her of her mental breakdown of sorts in college? Was it a psychosis? Was that the words they used?
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm not certain.
Okay. Yeah. Anyway, language and labels are,
Yeah,
kind of up in the air.
yeah.
Even within postpartum psychosis, there's.
Well, it's interesting because her diagnosis, there is no DSM code for postpartum psychosis, right? There's work going on to change that.
Hmm.
And Rowena is actually part of that tangentially. Her diagnosis was bipolar 2 and psychosis other, right? So like,
Oh,
yeah,
huh.
that because they treat it like bipolar, like a lot of the things that you, and a lot of people who have postpartum psychosis, again, I am citing what was told to me. I'm not an expert in this field.
Yeah, yeah.
People who have postpartum psychosis often have undiagnosed bipolar disorder. That is sort of the underlying cause. And the risk factors is the same. Like the lack of sleep is a triggering event for bipolar problems, and it's
Hmm.
also a triggering event for psychosis. So they sort of treat them the same.
There's similarities in how it's treated. And I understand that how they're pitching to have postpartum psychosis in the DSM is under bipolar, or it would be within the bipolar chapter. That's the current proposal. So because mood stabilizers are part of it, I think,
Yes.
part of treatment.
Yep.
So okay, so then you reached out through the text to 911 resource, which is amazing. I had never heard of that until
Yep.
Rowena's episode. Good to know. And hopefully, I think it actually is more available today than it was. Like it's growing.
Yeah.
Where else did you turn to get help?
So after she was in the hospital, I reached out to friends. We have an amazing support group of friends, local. I feel very blessed by that. Some of them are college friends, some of them are friends we made later in adulthood. But I reached out to a number of friends, and people would come over to help me with dinner and bedtime. Even had a friend stay overnight one night to help, which is funny because Carrie actually got sick in the middle of the night and she went and climbed into bed with Amanda in the guest room.
No
And Amanda,
way.
at first, because Amanda also has a daughter, and at first she was like, why is Ellie here? Wait, that's not Ellie. That's yeah. So,
That's sweet.
but that was actually really hard. I was actually holding it together pretty well until Carrie, she got sick. She had like a stomach bug and popped a fever, so she couldn't go to daycare. And
Oh
Rob
no.
in daycare because he was too little. And I kind of lost it for a couple of days. It was really difficult. But yeah, I reached out to a lot of friends. I eventually reached out to Rowena's mom and sister who had been planning to come down Labor Day weekend, and I asked them to come a week early to help me out with Robbie and Carrie over the weekend. And so they did that. And then my mother-in-law stayed for a little while. I think she stayed until Rowena got out of the hospital. So she helped me with Robbie a lot while I was solo parenting two kids. Luckily, I was off of work. I had some paternity leave through work and then also FMLA. So I was able to take the full 12 weeks off, which was great. Not all of it paid, but some of it paid. And then, yeah, so my mother was here to help. I actually went through a pretty bad depressive episode. I think I've just been at like 110% for so long. I've at some point crashed, and I had been seeing a therapist. I've seen a therapist for years, but I kind of talked to him. I was like, I think I am going through some kind of, I don't know, it's not PTSD, but like some kind of post-traumatic depression. And he was like, yeah. And he's like, maybe you should I ended up talking to my primary care doctor and getting back on medication that I'd been on years ago for depression that I had tapered off of a long time ago.
Oh,
It was a huge help. It just helped give me that kick in the pants, like I basically wanted to
yeah.
play video games all day. I didn't want to do my work. I didn't even want to be around Robbie, like, which was really
Hmm.
when I realized that about myself. And luckily my mother-in-law was here, so she took care of him most of the day. But that was really, really hard.
That's amazing that you already had providers and like a medication that you knew worked for you, it sounds like. That's lucky that you had that awareness and system in place
It took
for.
me a couple weeks to recognize it, though. I mean, I really did.
Yeah.
And then I
Can
finally was
you
like,
remind me of timing? So like it was
yeah.
only.
So Robbie was 2.5 weeks old. So we're like end of August is when Rowena went to the hospital. She was in the hospital for 10 days. She came home, and then a week later actually had to go back, which we can
Oh,
talk
right. Yeah, the
about.
second.
She was in
Hmm.
another week before she came home again. Her mom actually stayed. So I sent her mom home because sometimes they butt heads. My mother-in-law's amazing, but they, mother-daughter relationship. They
Yeah.
and so I was afraid that she was going to be triggering to Rowena when she was here. So that's why I kind of wanted her to go back home before Rowena came home. The second time, though, I was like, no, I need you to stay. So she actually stayed for a couple of weeks to help out. But yeah, it was during that time, I think, is when I realized that I was in a very depressive state and needed some additional help.
Yeah. Okay, so you're fully in. I mean, that's like the first month. That's early stage, newborn stage through that, and you're solo with family help. That's a lot to
Yes.
go through.
Family and friends.
Um,
Yes.
did you encounter barriers yourself as you sought care?
No, there were some barriers for Rowena. We didn't really have, I didn't have any problems myself. Like I said, I already had a therapist. We're very pro mental health in this house, which is a good thing. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't encounter any barriers for me when I talked to my doctor and I told her what was going on. She was like, yep, yeah, no problem. If you know this medication works for you, we'll start with a low dose and see how it helps and stuff. So I didn't encounter any barriers for myself.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Back on when you were texting your friend before the hospital, one follow-up question I had, did you have any internal battle about getting help or getting her to the hospital or any hesitations? What was going on for you?
Yeah, I was concerned that I was overreacting. That was the
Hmm.
concern, that this was going to be she was going to go to the hospital and that it would be unnecessary and that she would resent me for it or something like that.
Oh,
But we're I'm the kind of person, like I'll tell you, once she was at the hospital, I was relieved. I knew that she was where she needed to be in that moment, right?
yeah.
So I felt so much relief once Angelica from Grassroots confirmed that yes, she is likely experiencing a mental health crisis. She needs to go to the hospital. And then once we got her there, I felt it was a huge burden off my shoulders. Uh,
Yeah.
so the hesitation was just about, does she really need this? Am I overreacting? But there was no hesitation on my part about like, if she is experiencing a crisis, she needs to go to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
That path was very clear.
Uh-huh. Okay. What was the hardest moment for you?
When Carrie got sick and I realized
Mhm.
because I was doing okay because I would take Carrie to daycare. I'd bring Robbie home. Like I obviously had to pack him up in the car too, take him to daycare with me to drop off, and then bring him home. And then he and I would spend the day together. He would nap, I would nap while he was napping. I would feed him. Back then, we were trying to do syringe feeding with breast milk because we didn't
Oh.
know. I was like, I don't want to screw him up for latching for breastfeeding. So I want to like because if you give them a bottle, they can then get
Yeah.
so where I was still doing syringe feeding, which was a huge pain. Once she got admitted and was put on lithium, you can no longer breastfeed. And so at that point, I was like, all right, switching to bottles. That made it easier too. But yeah, so a couple of days in, when Carrie got sick and I had to keep her home with me and take care of her and Robbie by myself, I broke down. Yeah, that was a really tough couple of days because
And you didn't have family so there quite yet
no,
at that point?
I think our friend was able to come over one
Okay.
or two of the days to help me, but no, there was no. I mean, unfortunately, most of our family is like an hour or more away. So I have brothers that are like an hour, 30 to 40 minutes away for one, an hour away for the other, but they have full-time jobs, right? My mother
Right.
hired, but she's 2.5 hours away in New Jersey, so it was difficult. It was really hard for those couple of days.
Yeah. Can you share more on because that feels like if you were breastfeeding, you wouldn't have the bottles or the formula. Talk to me about that decision, like how you juggled that.
Yeah, so we were always like, we're not anti-formula, right? We were always open to supplementing with formula, but we wanted to be primarily breastfed if we were able to, right?
Okay.
Just there's a lot of benefits there, but sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes you don't produce enough milk.
Yeah.
We're not breast only. We're breast is best, but not breast only. And we were okay
Mm-hmm.
with formula. So we had a can of formula on standby. We always kept
Okay,
one
great.
can
Okay.
around. And we had like samples that you get in the mail or from the doctor or whatever. So but I was trying to not, and even when I was doing formula at first, it was, I would make it and then I would put it into a syringe and then you like put a finger inside the baby's mouth and then you like slowly give so that they're sucking on your finger.
Yeah.
Once I was able to switch to bottles, it did get easier. And we had some frozen breast milk. So I was actually for a while too, I was rationing the breast milk. I would do like 2 ounces of breast milk and then the rest formula so that he was getting at least 2 ounces of breast milk every day because there's like antibodies and stuff in there. So I was trying to stretch as long as I could and then eventually ran out, which is fine. But
Yeah, that's amazing that you were juggling all of that. Like defrosting frozen breast milk takes
yeah,
work
yeah,
and the formula and I remember that being a thing for me when I was hospitalized, the milk issue.
yeah. Well, and then
Uh,
hard for Rowena too because she's in the hospital. Like leaking. Like at first she was pumping, but they quickly were like, this is not going to be sustainable long term, especially once she had to go on medication that she couldn't breastfeed on. So they asked me to bring like a tight fitting sports bra for her so that her breast would stop producing milk and things like that.
Oh, yeah. I remember having to really advocate to pump it all.
Yeah,
Like
that
we're,
was, they don't really know how to handle that. She also, at one point, like she had a nurse, and I wasn't there for this, but she and our friend Steph were recounting tales. Like at one point, a nurse, like she needed to have, because she was still like recovering, she was like wearing pads and stuff because she still had some discharge and
she's
things.
probably still bleeding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
at some point, like a nurse came in and like dropped off like some stuff and then walked out of the room. It's like, what? So like our friend Stephanie and Rowena got real close because Steph had to help her like with all this stuff. So, and Steph does not have kids and has never been pregnant, never been through this stuff. So she like, it was a learning
Wow.
for her for sure.
Yeah. And so the friend was able to go to visitation and like help her in the
Just when
hospital,
she was in the ER, she stayed with her.
in the ER.
Yes,
Okay.
once, yeah, just, and you're really not supposed to have visitors, but they kind of, it's like the middle of the night. They kind of were a little bit lax with it, thankfully.
Is there anything about your experience that you feel gets talked about less that you feel is important to talk about?
So one thing, so talking about gaps in coverage, right?
Mm.
So one of the hardest things was, so Rowena got discharged from the hospital the first time. She got discharged on, was it like a Wednesday or something? And then I don't remember. It was 10 days, whatever it was, Wednesday, Thursday, whatever. A couple of days later, like a week later, she started having really bad side effects from her medication. So she was on haloperidol, and she
Uh-huh.
started experiencing something called akathisia. It's like an inner restlessness, and she literally couldn't sit still, couldn't lie down. But it also caused, there was like thought blocking, like she couldn't speak coherently, and like all
Huh.
kinds of stuff going on. She had not yet seen a provider outside of the hospital. Like we had an appointment set up, but there was nowhere I could turn to get her help.
Yeah.
So we went to Shepherd Pratt, which is a mental health hospital here in Maryland. They have an outpatient facility that's not far from
Okay.
us. So we went there, we sat in the waiting room for hours, Rowena constantly getting up, sitting down, having to walk around, barely being able to speak coherently. We finally see an NP there, and we're there for like an hour. And then they're like, yeah, clearly you're struggling. We're going to put you on our day hospital program, but they don't have an opening until next week. Like, what are we supposed to do?
How is that helpful?
So
Yeah.
the next day, I had to take her back to the ER. I mean, because she wasn't sleeping because she can't lie down for more than a minute at a
Yeah,
time.
that's a red flag.
The sound of our bed creaking as she like would lay down, then get up, I was like about to punch a wall. So it was like nails on a chalkboard to me. It was so
Uh,
bad. I felt bad. I was like getting angry because I was just so irritated by that because I wasn't sleeping either. So again, took the kids to school the next day, or took Carrie to school to daycare the next day. Rowena, Robbie, and I went to the ER. At first, I started driving to the ER where she had been admitted, which was not the same ER she went to. They didn't have a bed in their behavioral unit. So she got admitted to a hospital that's
transfer.
45 minutes away from us versus the one that's 5 minutes away, because that's where they had a bed available. So I started driving there and I was like, screw it, too far, there's too much traffic. It was like rush hour. So I drove back and went to the closer ER, which apparently was the right decision. Always go to the closest
Okay.
ER. But in my brain, I was like, I want to take her back where she was, like they know her, right? And
Right. They just finished caring for her.
so, but took her back to the ER, was there with her for a little while. Robbie actually had his 1 month checkup that afternoon. So I stayed with her for a little while at the hospital. Then I was like, I gotta go. Like, I gotta take him to his appointment. So, but yeah, she was at that ER again for about a day. And then they sent her back to the other hospital that she had just been discharged from.
Had you been given language for postpartum psychosis? Was
So yeah,
that
we actually, so the doctor that she saw at Suburban Hospital, that's the one in Bethesda, Maryland. So the doctor at Suburban, who's Dr. Bone was her name. So she was wonderful, and she was actually a specialist in postpartum mood disorder. So that was
Oh,
great. We lucked out.
yeah.
So she was very communicative with me. I asked a lot of questions, and she was really good at answering my questions. And they had a social worker there that would contact me every couple of days and let me know how things were going. I went and visited when I was able to. They had like 2 hours of visitation in the evenings or in the afternoons. So
Hmm.
whenever I was able to, I would go. So Dr. Bone explained to me, yes, what postpartum psychosis was, like that's likely what she had, even though that's not what her diagnosis code would say. And that's when I learned about how they treat it with mood stabilizers, and it's treated very similarly to bipolar and things like that. So we did have the language at that point. I did not know what the heck was happening when she got akathisia from her Haldol. We had no idea what that was.
Yeah,
No,
I think
us
given what you had just gone through, any not sleeping and like
yes.
fidgeting or
Yeah.
that would be scary.
Yeah. So, and it was a, like she was moving slowly too. Like she was moving like she was 80 years old, and like she was
Huh.
just, and because apparently muscle stiffness is part of that. So like not only could she not sit
Oh.
still, but her muscles were incredibly stiff. So it was difficult for her to move. Driving to the ER too, like her being seatbelted into a seat, she like was rocking and like all kinds of stuff that was very scary and concerning.
Wow.
But
Yeah. So then the second visit, they figure out her medication.
yeah, so I mean, they really quickly knew what it was, right? Once she got admitted to suburban, they're like, within a day, they're like, yep, this is akathisia. This is, it's a response. We're going to take her off the Haldol and put her on these other medications. I don't even remember what they all were.
Yeah.
But they have alternative treatments that they can use. So, and it's funny, I was actually messaging a friend of mine, a friend of ours who who is a psychiatrist. And she actually was telling me, she's like, oh yeah, they're going to take her off that Haldol and they're going to put her on Zyprexa and this and that and the other. And that's exactly what they did.
Really?
So,
Cool.
yeah.
It sounds like you were messaging openly with friends and family
Yes,
about the experience.
I am very much the kind of person where when I feel out of control, I seek information. I read, I Google, I do everything I can to try and figure out what's going on, what I can do. That's actually how I found PSI, Postpartum Support International. And they had a lot of resources on their website. There's like 2 PDFs that I read over a dozen times about what it's like, how to be a supportive partner when they come home, like all those kind of things. And then they also have a support group for families that are going through it. So they have a weekly support group, people who are going through postpartum psychosis or have been through it, and they have a once a month support group for family members of people that are going through or have been through it. So that was really interesting and very helpful to talk about it. It also helped me see one of the things, it was hard for me to accept praise. People were telling me, Derek, I'm so glad that you recognize the signs. You did amazingly. To me, I did the bare minimum of what should be required of a partner, right? I was paying attention. I noticed what was going on. I got her the help she needed. Like, it was very hard for me to accept praise. I mean, let's be honest, it's hard for me to accept praise on a normal day, but it was very hard for me to accept praise. And then I go to the support group and I hear about other families and what they're going through. I was like, wow, I guess I did do a pretty good job. There was hearing about a family whose daughter went through it, and the husband recorded her psychotic episodes and then used that to get custody of the children. Like, that's terrible. I am still angry about that 2.5 years later, that kind of thing goes on. Like, hopefully I haven't talked to them in 2 years. I don't know. Hopefully that situation has resolved itself. But that really angered me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's not great. So you found PSI when she was in the psych ward?
Yeah, within like 2 days of her getting admitted to the hospital, and once I knew what was going on, I started Googling all about. I mean, also not healthy to be Googling about things at 2 a.m. when I should be sleeping. So there are drawbacks to this coping mechanism as well.
Yeah. Well, but then having language and understanding what resources are available, what to expect, even language for you to use when in the next stage.
Yes. Yeah.
What did you find to be most helpful?
The PDFs that I found on their website about postpartum psychosis were very helpful. They gave me a lot of context, helped me understand, the doctor at the hospital talking about this is very treatable, 95% or whatever of cases fully resolve with and are manageable. Things like that were very helpful to hear. And, obviously the friends that we had that were so supportive. I actually, because Rowena was teaching part-time for a university online, like a university in Indiana. And so I contacted one of her coworkers at the university that I had met before. And I was like, hey, FYI, in case someone's trying to reach Rowena, like, she's in the hospital, here's what's going on. And she and Rowena are very close. So I felt like I could share those details. And she called me and we talked. And then she actually connected me with a friend of theirs from grad school who had a cousin who had gone through like postpartum psychosis, and then I ended up
Oh,
with that person. So like
wow.
it's we have a large network of very, very helpful people, which I not everyone has, and I'm very thankful we do. But that was helpful in helping me get context to understand what was going on. So yeah.
Yeah. So it sounds like you disclosed to any like
Yeah,
uh
we are oversharers by nature. We're open books. I mean, I don't, and again, I don't feel any shame about mental health. There's nothing
uh-huh.
to be ashamed. It is the same as physical health. There's nothing to be ashamed of. So I was contacting people one-on-one. I wasn't publicly posting about things. Once Rowena was out of the hospital, I did make a post like on like Facebook to our friends to be like, hey, we're going through this. Please don't reach out and ask me how it's going. It's so overwhelming when like 30 people are texting for status updates.
Right. And you're saying the same thing over and
Yeah, someone just got so sick
explaining.
of answering the questions. Luckily, everyone, lots of messages of support, but and I knew that there were people that were like reaching out to other people because they're like, I'm concerned, I want to know what's going on, but I know I can't text him, right? But
Oh.
yeah, so we did share publicly, and that's why we also, it was actually really therapeutic for us. I mean, I won't speak for her, but I think that it's therapeutic for both, definitely for me, and I think for both of us, to talk about this and help people understand it. If I can help one person be aware of this and
Mm-hmm.
figure out how to get through it, that's valuable to me, and that makes me feel better about having that we had to go through it.
Yeah. Well, I'm grateful that you both all have shared and are open and even just modeling that is good for our society, but also for me because I was able to find you all. So we talked about hardest moments. Are there moments that you and Rowena look back on and smile? Like silly moments?
We joke about it all the time. I mean, I still feel like occasionally there are things that come up that I didn't know about. Like we laugh about the fact that she thought she would see like TV characters like in her paper towel dispenser in her bathroom in her room in the hospital. There was one point where she thought that I was a cult leader.
Oh,
And like I was on the phone with her because they got their phones for like 2 hours in the evening where they could be on their phone either on the internet or they could call people.
okay.
So she called me and I mean, I don't want to be too graphic. She thought that I was sexually involved with cult members, that I was the leader of a cult, and that I was cheating on her with members of the cult at one point. And so she asked me, she's like, "Who's there with you?" I was like, "Well, Sarah's here. She's helping me with with the kids." She's like, "No, who else is there? Like, who's like at your feet right now?" I was like, "Nobody." And I had to like turn the camera around and like show her that there was no one else there. That's
Oh.
paranoid delusions, right? It's
Yeah,
all.
yeah, yeah,
And
paranoia.
now that's funny to us. It wasn't then. I was like
Right.
annoyed, but
Yeah. Well, and you're like, why are you asking me
yeah, like
this?
what's going on? And we think she watches a lot of like murder and cult documentaries. And so we're like, that was
Oh,
probably present in her brain, and the brain makes weird connections when it's struggling. So,
yeah. I love that. She also shared one of my favorites from her blog, this Prince Zuko from Avatar.
well, that's who she saw in the paper towel dispenser was Zuko.
Oh,
Yeah,
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 yeah.
yeah. I love it. There's such bizarre elements in someone's psychosis. So,
Well, it's so interesting when your brain breaks. It tries its best to like figure things out, and it makes weird connections and
yeah.
all kinds of stuff. She thought that Carrie had like a script and was like playing a part in a play, and she didn't know like when Carrie came home from her play date that day before she went to the hospital.
Yeah.
She thought that Carrie had been given a script, but she didn't know what her lines were supposed to be, so that was like really distressing to her.
She wasn't prepared for the
Yeah,
play.
she wasn't prepared for the part.
Yeah, I love it. When you look back on all of this, the acute stage and longer recovery, how did this change you?
Interesting question. Again, I think it really we want to be advocates for awareness of postpartum disorders, mood disorders. So that's a big thing for us. It definitely made me more conscious of my own mental health. Caregiver burnout is a real thing, but it's hard. Do you know the TV show The Pit?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's an episode of that. I love that show. There's an episode there where like the daughter has to take care of her mom, and she wants to be there for her, but clearly she's struggling so much like to try and take care of her mom because she has to
Mm,
be with her like constantly and take care of all her needs and stuff. People don't want to think that caregiver burnout is real, especially when you're in it. I didn't want to recognize it in myself either. I'm like, it is my job to take care of these kids and take care of my sick wife and all these things, right? And that is hard.
so
And
hard.
you want to be there. You're like, well, the person who's sick, they have it harder than I do. I don't have any right to complain. And that's just not true.
Right.
So that was a big realization for me. I think I've become just more, I try to be more compassionate when people are going through various struggles. I'm an engineer, so my emotional intelligence is not always the highest. I've worked on it over the years. But
It seems quite high, I would say.
now it's much better than it used to be, but I think that changed for me over the last couple of years. It probably changed before that just because I had tried, but really in the last 3 years, I think it's really gotten even higher. Just that's something that I've worked on in myself and tried to really be conscious of things. I recognized in myself that I recently upped my dose of my antidepressants because I was getting very angry with the kids. And I talked to my therapist about it. He was like, you realize that anger can be a sign of depression. And I was like, oh, interesting. It was just Robbie. Well, first of all, Robbie knows how to push my buttons. He's 2.5. Last night he was annoying us, but just because he'll say he doesn't want something and then you make a decision and he wants the thing that he said he didn't want. Very
Oh,
typical for
my
a 2-year-old.
4-year-old does that too.
Yeah, yeah. Very typical for a toddler. But
Yeah.
I used to get so angry at him. So angry. And then I would get angry at myself for getting angry at him because he's the baby.
The layers of.
Yes.
Okay, this was a bit of an aha for me. I distinctly remember being surprised by my own short fuse in the year after my postpartum experience. It's a great reminder, first, to talk about these things and to reality check yourself. If you are feeling more irritable or quicker to anger than you typically are, it's just a good reminder that can be tied to depression. We often think of depression as sadness, and for some, it can show up as irritability or anger. It's interesting that irritability is listed as a core symptom of depression in the DSM for kids, but not for adults. However, providers are looking for that, it sounds like. And of course, feeling angry doesn't necessarily mean depression is involved, but there is research showing a connection between the two. I'll include a study in the show notes that explores how difficulty regulating emotions and getting stuck in cycles of rumination can contribute to depressive episodes. They're looking particularly at anger and how addressing these patterns can help prevent them. Other research looks at how pharmacological support or medications like antidepressants can help ease symptoms as well.
I don't like to take unnecessary medication, but like getting my dosage up on my antidepressants was so helpful. I feel like I have so much more capacity now for the kids to, like, when they're misbehaving and they're dysregulated, I am better able to regulate myself, right?
Amazing.
So just being aware of that need and acknowledging it and taking care of it. I think, a lot of people, and my dad had anger management issues too, right? And looking back on it, I think he had depression and he really needed to deal with that. And he never did. My parents just weren't the kind of people. Like when I went through my depression in college, they didn't really know how to handle it because we didn't talk about mental health in our family, right? And they did the best they could. I credit to them. And both my parents are passed now, but
sorry to hear that.
But they did the best they could. They weren't anti it. Like I know some parents can be like that, and
just not on their radar.
Lazy. Depression's not real, right? But they were not like that. They struggled to understand.
Right.
But so just that mental state of being aware of your own deficiencies and being willing to work on them, and just being aware of how things affect me, right? Because like I said, the caregiver burnout was a big wake up call for me. That once I realized that, and I don't even think I had a word for it back then, right? But that awareness of I was at 110% for so long, and I have crashed, and I've gone the other direction.
Yeah, that's really powerful, and I love the connection of depression and anger. Also, the awareness that you had.
Yeah,
and again,
my therapist to draw the line for me, right?
Okay.
But
you articulated it, and then there was yes, let's do something about it and get medication to help with your regulation. That's wise. Even just the ability to know yourself and know, hey, I am more X than normal is not something everyone has.
It was so, because I always wanted to be a dad, and I love being a dad, but once I realized I didn't even want to be around Robbie, that was like a huge wake for me. And I was like, something is wrong with me. Something. I gotta do something. So and luckily I had someone. I mean, when I had to be around him, I would. But luckily, my mother-in-law was here during that time, and I literally offloaded all of his care onto her. I mean, which I then later felt guilty about, right? But thankfully, she was here to help.
Right.
But
You just needed to, there's no guilt, right? Getting
now I
through
don't feel
that
guilty.
is
Back then I did.
right.
Now I recognize that it was just, I was burnt out. I was overloaded and overwhelmed.
Hmm. Okay. If you
Yeah.
could change one thing about the way systems respond to families dealing with mental health crises, what would it be?
Yeah, I wish we had known more about the symptoms of postpartum anxiety and been able to intercept them earlier. I don't know if it would
Mm,
have made a difference. The other thing is the care, once she was discharged from the hospital, that gap in care in having a provider was huge. I mean, I called the office that she was supposed to be like start seeing someone, but it was like a week out. And they were like, oh, well, we can move the appointment up by 2 days, but that didn't really help us at all. And so that gap there, I don't know what the right answer is, but I think there's got to be something. Because once you're discharged from the hospital, like they can't, unless you go back to the hospital, they don't even really take your calls. Like once you're outside of their care.
right. Like, how would you contact the psychiatrist at the psych ward?
I mean, I actually called and, I got like the nurse's line. They're like, oh, well, we'll see if the provider's able to call you. And like it took 24 hours for somebody to call me back. I mean, I guess the right answer was to take her to the ER, but we didn't know that at the time.
Well, and could there have been another option that would have been easier to access and quicker to get care?
Yeah. Well, and luckily the day hospital program was a good thing once she finally got admitted because she went back to the hospital on a weekend and she was supposed to start the day hospital that following Monday. And I had to call them and be like, she's back in the hospital. She'll be there in a week, right? Or whenever.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the day hospital program was great. It was literally like a 9 to 5. She'd go, they would do medication management. They had therapy. They gave her coping strategies, all kind of stuff that were really helpful for her. Yeah. There's gotta be, I wish that there was something between the hospital and your first like outpatient visit or get
Mm,
that outpatient visit like closer to when she's discharged from the hospital, right?
hmm.
So that
Yeah.
care there.
Okay. Final question. If you were talking to another partner who recently navigated postpartum psychosis, what advice would you give them?
I think there's two main things. Number one is this is not the end of the world. It is treatable. It is manageable. You will get through this. It's going to be hard. Ask for help. Don't be ashamed. Those kind of things. The second thing is I really encourage people to look up, and again, it's on PSI's website, but how to care for someone who's going through this.
Mm.
When I went to the support group, there was actually another husband on the call who was an ER nurse, right?
Oh,
And his wife went through postpartum psychosis. But when she came home, he treated her like a patient, right? He tried his very best. But what they really need, and again, I'm not an expert, I'm regurgitating stuff I read 2 years ago. They need to be involved with their child. Like I would basically give Rowena like supervised visits, like allow her to be around Robbie, but I'd be present too in case she started to feel anxious or anything was going on, right? But you don't want to separate them. Like when Rowena came home, she needs to get reintegrated to the family and feel like she's a part of the family again, feel like just a patient. That was really important. And again, I wouldn't have known that except I read about it. But
mm.
helping navigate, helping them feel normal, acknowledging it. Hey, you went through a hard thing and that's okay. But like, we're going to get through it together.
We're gonna get through it together. I love this reminder. It's clear that postpartum experiences don't just affect one person, they ripple through families, relationships, and everyday life in ways that can be hard to name in the moment. I'm so grateful to Derek for sharing his experience and for such honest, real conversation around mental health. I've included the partner guide he mentioned in the show notes. It's full of thoughtful, practical reminders like taking small steps to rebuild confidence, making space to talk, prioritizing time together as a couple, and having a plan in place if things feel off again. The support groups that Derek mentioned through PSI for families touched by postpartum psychosis, they meet the first Wednesday of every month. I have included a link in the show notes if you want to find out more information about that. Please take this as a reminder to acknowledge and take care of your own needs. That could look like hobbies. It could look like scheduling a doctor's appointment you've been meaning to, making space for therapy, or looking at medication. Please use the tools available to you. It's part of taking care of yourself. and it's important. Please be kind to your mind, and thanks for listening.